is he doing? He's just glazing capitalism? Where?
We have figured it out, that we've found the best system of organizing society.
I think that, you
like
know,
we're at the end of history.
I think part of it you have to tangle with is what's realistic. Like, what's a realistic way for people to form?
I feel like if we're talking about America,
what is realistic about a society that, I mean, we live in Los Angeles. There's thousands of homeless people starving on the street in our neighborhood.
But I'm not advocating for that.
Right, but I'm saying that people see the flaws in the system that we currently have, and so that
I see them too.
And there's a lot of, and this is the thing, you're saying like everybody's a radical communist. That's not necessarily the case. Being anti-capitalist doesn't equate that. It just is somebody that has landed on the side of the coin, that they think that the system that we have, that capitalism is not working. And there's a huge variety of people, ways that people go from that. Well, and some people, I mean, most Republicans, and I would say even a lot of Democrats would say what you just described, that social democrat kind of point of view.
They're not.
Would say that you are anti-capitalist with that point of view. Because,
then fine, then I accept that. Right. I mean, say whatever the fuck you want.
And social democrats are very often seen as kind of like right on the fence between the what people call the left and the right.
So I'm walking the middle path, like the Buddha himself.
Right, you're taking the middle path.
Don't you feel though that here in America, like people can't even afford healthcare or education? So like, isn't a social democracy a first step that we should all try to get to?
Yeah, a lot of people do feel that way.
Before like trying to get to like,
there's an enormous amount of nuance and degrees here. Yeah.
So 100%. I think
that it's like for us, we're mostly talking about like what we see as realistic, like what's the first step that we should at least try to get, like the bare minimum. I've been here 7 years. I'm still shocked about healthcare. Like it shocks me every single time I deal with it.
It is shocking.
I paid $200 just to get a blood test. Like it's insane. It's insane. So to me, it's like, yeah, we can talk like philosophical and we can talk all kinds of things, but I feel like what's actually going to happen? What's something that would be a first step to improve?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of opinions on that. And, you know, a lot of people would say that it does need to be an incremental thing and we need to work towards that. I mean, even people who describe themselves as communists say that, because again, like the USSR, for example, which is the most famous example of like a big country, a big superpower level country that people consider communist, right? Within their own framework, they never thought that they were communist. They thought they were taking steps towards communism, and in a variety of different ways. And so it's just about like that's an ideal. That's like an end goal that people who would self-describe as communists are. Now, what I would say a radical communist is somebody that wants a violent revolution to overthrow the government and take over and implement that system as closely as possible now, which is something that has happened in a variety of places to varying degrees of atrocities that fell out of that.
But when you say you're an anti-capitalist, though, does that mean that you are critical of capitalism?
Which I am.
You mean a variety.
Which I am. I think you say you're a capitalist, but it's a lot more nuanced.
I'm not against the idea of capitalism. I think it's a good system with the correct mechanisms
a lot of corrections.
Because when you say you're anti-capitalist, it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't believe in capitalism as a governing
what it comes down to me too is when you threw out that line from Glenn Ross about greed being good or whatever, I don't think
that's not from that. That's like isn't that like a
no,
that's like a
Glenn Ross.
I don't think that's the first time that was written.
Well,
go ahead. Anyway, regardless,
it's certainly not the first time that people have felt that way. But that line that people often repeat is from that play. But anyways, yeah. I mean, all it comes down to me is that I don't think arranging society based on greed is good for the human spirit, and I think we see the consequences of that all around us.
So,
a hyper-capitalistic society like the
greed needs to have bumpers. Okay, because the idea that we can live in a society without greed is a fairy tale. It just doesn't exist, and you can't approach a practical way of governing a huge body of people without looking at it realistically. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the USSR again, And I mean, it's a catastrophe because the people on the top who rise to the top are the ones that are pathological. They are
You
greedy.
don't think that happens in our society?
It is, but like, that's not the antithesis of everything that we
and
stand for.
You think that capitalism does a better job at
you gotta
harnessing
you have to
that
be
greed?
aware. Say, listen, we live in a world where greed is inevitable, and so we need to harness that for the good that it does provide, and we need to.
I think beyond this conversation, there's one other aspect where I will always have a limited audience on. Like, I will always hemorrhage viewers on, and that is my opinion on foreign policy. My opinion on America's foreign adversaries does not toe the line of the fucking the mainstream American perspective. If I were to just sit around and say China is the worst country on the fucking planet, and that, like, they've done only bad, they're the most genocidal nation on the planet, no one else comes anywhere near it, everyone would go, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. You are the greatest political commentator of our generation. You know, you've done it. You've done the best thing because I give you the domestic policy that you want to understand. But spiritually speaking, Americans cannot see the world beyond. Americans cannot see the fucking world beyond like a world where America dominates the world. You know what I mean? I think Ethan's on the right track as far as like his criticisms of capitalism goes. I see social democrats who are capitalists at the end of the day as allies in the fight to marginally improve workplace conditions and help make people's material conditions better in the United States of America. That's just how it works. You know, there is like, they are seen as like radical people. That's why Bernie Sanders, who is a democratic socialist himself, still very much will push for social democracy on the policy front, you know?
Send us and who should lead us is something like that's a better system than like
yeah,
say
I know,
China,
guys.
right,
Sockdem's killed
they
Rosa
have
Luxemburg.
a
I
council
know.
of elites
Okay.
and somebody is elected from within, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what if we ran companies that way? Because companies aren't democracies; they're totalitarian.
So how do you run a company? So first of all, usually how are companies made? Usually,
I would never talk to Ethan about this because this is the one aspect where it goes directly against his best interest.
Google,
right?
Made by a few entrepreneurs.
Like, I wouldn't debate Ethan on this front. I mean, obviously it's different for Dan because, like, Dan is you know, he works with Ethan in a different way. But if I were to debate someone who is a business owner, friend or not friend, like, that's not a talking point that I would use because that shuts you out of the combo aggressively.
That's why I asked the question about how
like,
do you feel about elected.
Because like an
government.
independent artist is also running a business and could be making a lot of money depending. There's a wide range. So how do we what do we define as?
Businesses aren't government.
No, they're not. They're
part
run
of like
very
the freedom
differently.
we
I agree,
enjoy.
But I agree that
we're
like a
talking about
company like
ways that we
Google is almost like
organize-
government.
Yeah, we're you know,
Well,
in
that's
a
a whole
broad
different
sense.
aspect of regulating these
Yeah.
like monster
Yeah.
businesses.
Right, and oftentimes, you know, when there are critical parts of society,
Like, if I were to talk about the way Ethan runs his company, I would say, think about the benefits that you offer every single person around you because of the close, tight-knit relationship you have with your producers, because you see them as like
at least in
a
theory,
major benefit to your productive output. You yourself are a worker or an owner operator in that situation. It's not reasonable that every single mega corporation is going to operate in a similar capacity, which is why you need to make sure that instead of relying on the magnanimous nature of capital owners, we must set certain boundaries and create allowances for unionization, which is the only way to claw back power from the bosses in other situations. Like, hoping that every single person will be kind enough to make assurances to their labor force is going to be super silly. It's not going to happen, and it hasn't happened. You know what I mean? It's look no further than the way that it works, right? It's just not going to happen. If that was the case, if it helps, you made me reevaluate some of my foreign policy views. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I will still do it because I'm an incredibly stubborn person and obviously very passionate about the things that I believe and the things that I hold as like a real, genuine truth. So I can't shut the fuck up about it. But for every one person whose mind I change marginally on foreign policy, I probably lose like 2,000 people who are like, I'm writing him off. I don't care. He's always going to behave this way. He's just bad. He always has to bring America. And it's like, yeah, I have to bring America because I live here. I choose to live here. And I think America has a lot of potential. And the unfortunate reality is that, like, that is always going to offend the delicate sensibilities of American exceptionalists who also fancy themselves to be real revolutionaries in America. There's plenty of people who are liberals or progressives or even socialists in America who once you question the hegemonic power structure of America in the global scale, they go, what the fuck? What are you doing? Hold on. Don't disrupt the delicate balance here. Everything you said on Leftovers yesterday was really good, but it definitely broke a lot of people's brains. It's the same people. It's the same people who want to like me because they understand that I have their best interest in mind when it comes to domestic policy. When it comes to like domestic issues, they know I have their best interest in mind. But when it comes to foreign policy, the moment that I move away and present an international working class perspective, a lot of Americans are, I mean, that's a second hurdle. That's a much larger one to clear, in my opinion. That's a harder fucking argument to shake for many Americans than describing to a small business owner that, you know, workers having a say at the table, a seat at the bargaining table is good. Much harder.
Listen, social.
So
Like,
I don't
got
think
a problem with what you're describing, really. Like, I agree. I mean, and
I don't think putting the government in charge is going to improve anything. If you were talking,
a lot of Western leftists shill chauvinists that like to place themselves at the vanguard of a new revolution, not realizing that they have probably the least practical experience out of all the leftists in the world. Yeah,
people that need then that's it. Then but. Listen, I'm open to having a debate about these things. I'm not saying one way or the other.
Conversation about it. I just think that.
Listen,
only
time will absolve me of all my sins that you perceive I have at this very moment for propagandizing.
You're right. I mean, especially in the early days when it's just little companies figuring it out. But then at a certain point, when does the internet become a human right? When does living in society, does the internet become a requirement, and does it become fucked up?
I don't think you're being fair.
They can't afford it.
I don't think you're being fair. Some of us actually think your foreign policy is just plain biased. A lot of what you point to as a positive in China, such as infrastructure, are actually not comparable to countries. If you look at statistically at cities, some of it is literally falling apart. Dude, I'm sorry, but that is the most idiotic fucking take, especially considering the reality that I regularly talk about even development and the difference between rural infrastructure and the issues that China has with developing rural areas. But more importantly than that, I'm making a comparison between China's fucking development and city development in general versus America. I live here. I know America very well. I don't know China that well, okay? But in comparison between America and China, there's not even a fucking question. Our infrastructure has been crumbling since we designed it in the 1930s. Okay? That is fucking psychotic. Like, go literally look at West Virginia and its fucking dirt roads and tell me that the wealthiest nation on earth, that has been the wealthiest nation on earth for damn near a fucking century at this goddamn point, like, and tell me how acceptable that is in comparison to a country that was entirely in the throes of extreme poverty at the global level, who was able to eviscerate it over the course of 20 fucking years. This shit is so frustrating. I fucking hate this conversation. It's like, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? I can't stand motherfuckers who talk like this. And it's not just me. Look at fucking Foreign Policy Magazine, Michael Bloomberg, or any number of American capitalists who also fucking recognize Chinese development as like a unique thing. A unique thing that could not happen without central planning, mind you. Okay? The way you frame it makes it sound like sometimes the China even beats EU and Japan. Compared to the US, of course, we're still way behind, but the way it's framed, no, you're just coping because you want me to fucking say China bad, China bad, China bad. I'm sorry. Okay? It is a pathetic cope from Ameri-brained dipshits who cannot comprehend that America has fallen behind, okay? I'm no BRICS guy. I'm not going to sit here and be like, China is going to overtake America or whatever the fuck. Because I think that on that side, people are also being a little ridiculous, okay? Oh, these nations are united on ideology. It's like, no, they're just leveraging a relationship with China, okay, for better deals, most likely from the Western world, all right? There are better examples of good infrastructure. The fact that China is even brought up as a good example. China is brought up as an incredible example for development because it is the best example for development over such a short period of time. If this is offensive to you, I don't know what to tell you. If you look at the ghost cities of yesteryear, 10 years ago, and what they look like now, you will understand that. If you want to fucking close your eyes to that reality, you can go ahead. What is a better example? Yeah, Dubai, is that what you think is a better example? A capitalist fucking shithole? Like, you could say China has been awful to its own labor force, okay? But at least its own labor force is seen as a part of the fucking nation. They're Han Chinese. Dubai just uses third world slave labor and doesn't give them the same fucking amenities and shovels poop out of the goddamn the beautiful buildings that they've built because they don't have a fucking working sewage structure. Get the fuck out of here. Japan and EU. Okay, got it. EU is running 20 years behind America on the worst impacts of capitalist exploitation and the harm it does to a relatively sizable welfare state. Just fucking wait, okay? They're already going through that right now. EU's motherfucking infrastructure is on the downturn as well. There are some noticeably good examples of cities that are actually doing whatever they can for, as they switch over to renewable energy and whatnot. But overall, America's problems exist in the EU as well. If you're talking about Japan, Japan is, again, another hilarious. Why are you arguing with a proxy for some dipshit YouTuber? I assume I am currently, because this is a 22-month subscriber, okay? It's crazy to me that someone who's been a fucking supporter and a fan for 22 months, that has avoided ad breaks for 22 fucking months, okay, nonstop, is still in here and agrees with me on almost everything, but can't fucking see the one aspect. They're still talking about this.
Come on, stop it.
Well,
people act like I'm stomping on workers' faces because I don't rev share.
Our audience has a wide range of views, and obviously leans pretty far left, just because all the personalities on this show do.
Listen, every time a measure comes to raise taxes in LA or otherwise, I always vote yes. I said I'm going to pay 75%.
A lot of people who criticize China for authoritarianism don't realize they do it because the West is constantly trying to meddle in their affairs. No, I don't agree with that. No. I don't agree with that. That is the reason why China has to like fucking lock shit down. I agree with that for Cuba. I don't agree with that for China. China has TikTok, man. What are we talking about?
But yeah, I mean,
I think the greed is a good thing, threw people off too. I think that people being greedy is an inherent and inevitable trait of the human spirit. I'm not saying of everybody. I'm not saying everybody's greedy. I'm saying if you take 1,000 people, a certain percent of them are going to be greedy and motivated by power and wealth and status, okay? And a lot of times there's going to be an oversight of these people's being sociopaths and being super capable, super smart. Mm-hmm. And we can harness this for what good it can do, which is like innovation, productivity, efficiency, and stuff like that, while also regulating it to make sure it doesn't also ruin society and that it serves people well in general. And I think that's just realistic. It doesn't matter if you're in a society, doesn't matter if you're living in pure socialism, doesn't matter if you're living in, any form of governance. There's going to be a percent of people that are highly capable, intelligent sociopaths obsessed with money and status and power. Mm-hmm. And so, and there's going to be good people that are successful too. That's not what I'm saying. But these are the people that really cause the problem. And so
let's not encourage them.
That's just how you do not encourage. That's human nature, bro. Like, I just don't believe that there's ever going to be...
You just don't think that there's anything that you can do about people being greedy and fucking people over? There's just nothing you can do
People are born with fucking, that's like saying, I don't want anyone to be born a sociopath. Let's end sociopathy.
I'm not saying...
You're not gonna end sociopathy.
Yeah, of course not. I'm not saying that. Of course, I agree with what you're saying, that there's... People are greedy. Just... Should that behavior be rewarded?
I don't even know what that means. What do you mean rewarded? Maybe, and now it is, but I'm saying...
Again, nobody... Ian's telling you to shut up.
I have to pee. I'm sorry. I have to jump in.
Hold on.
What do you mean? I don't even know what that means. It's encouraged. I mean, it is what it is.
You said it yourself. You said greed is good.
I just said that was misconstrued.
But here's the thing. But okay, fine.
Why is Ethan's going through his
for the good it can do?
You don't believe that.
Ethan's going through his. I'm gonna debate the socialist art.
The world do.
Okay, well that's inevitable.
I don't think that's inevitable. That's where we differ.
Well, regardless,
I
don't think it should matter what people think, because ultimately, in the way that the framework that things are built, it's not going to matter what they think about greed.
I agree.
That's going to be,
and that's why it's not a great framework, in my opinion.
Why?
I would have just said Ethan's going through his Fuckasan arc. No, he's not. No, but there are certainly a lot of people who see every time we have a conversation like this and assume that this is a good opportunity to drive a wedge, to immediately go and like brigade subreddits, for example, and be like, Hassan's a fucking idiot. And I like suspiciously see so many of the same comments that I see on LSF, for example, on the H3H3 subreddit. Very strange every time we talk about foreign policy. So odd. I wonder where they're coming from. Anyway, could be any number of different places online, specifically on YouTube. But they don't say that about Dan because they know Ethan and Dan have been working alongside one another for many, many years, or they don't really know Dan that much and don't really care to drive a wedge between that relationship. They have 2,000 Taiwanese posted in the H3H2 subreddit yesterday. Yeah, everyone is a Taiwanese all of a sudden. The thing is, like, I think Ethan's heart is in the right place, and he has gone through a transition personally. Saying greed is inherent is just self-reporting. I think assuming that greed is inherent is completely understandable. It's just, it feels like it's a part of, it feels like a second nature if you live under a capitalist framework. Greed was a cardinal sin in the Bible. This shit's been around for millennia. No, I think that it's people think it's human nature because of social conditioning. And yes, human beings are self-interested. That part is true for sure. But human beings also are very collective. They're very collectivist. Humanity is comprised of both self-interest and collectivism at the behest of self-interest. But it's just, I don't know. All creatures are self-interested. Survival makes all living things act in a certain way. Greed is cultural and political. I don't think Ethan realizes the way he treats employees is an exception, not a rule. Yeah, if I donate 1,000 to a homeless person tomorrow, then that is going against my innate nature or what? Obviously not. Human nature is mutable depending on conditions. Not much more can be definitively said about it. You consider all the shit Ethan has been gone through, losses, financial trauma, it would make sense that he'd be this cynical. Under socialism, the need for acquisition of wealth is removed, therefore greed, at least for money and power, is reduced. I think Ethan is conflating greed with exploitation, even if you think greed is inherent to humans, which I don't. Exploitation is not, and capitalism necessitates exploitation. Yes, it normalizes it, it necessitates it, it makes it seem as though it's like the best possible structure. It's silliness. What is the I always fuck this quote up, but it's like, you would think greed is a part of a naturally occurring phenomena, a part of human nature under a capitalist organization of the economy, just like you would think that coughing is a natural phenomena if all you knew was working in the coal mines. It was like your Taiwan convoy or so, he realizes personal connections and get uncomfortable. No, I don't think he gives a shit. I don't think he gives that much of a shit about Taiwan necessarily. Like he's not necessarily, he doesn't have a stake in the Taiwan conversation in the same way that he would in capitalism. Like, no, he just likes bringing it up because one, he likes having a back and forth, and two, it brings a lot of attention over to the show and to the subreddit. It's not a bad thing necessarily.